Zelda is one of my all-time favorite video game franchises. The worlds, the puzzles, the enemies. I mean, when the game is good, it hits the spot like nothing else really does. And I'll be honest, nostalgia is definitely a factor for me. I've been playing these games for like 2 decades now, so I've watched as they've grown and changed over the years. Today, Zelda is synonymous with innovative open-world gameplay and massive landscapes. But when I was a kid, none of that was there yet. My introduction to Zelda looked a little more like yeah, when I first played Zelda as a kid, I actually hated it. I think I was just too young or too dumb of a kid at the time. All I knew was Mario and Sonic. I didn't know what you were supposed to be doing in a Zelda game, and I always either rented it or played it somewhere else. So every time I did, I would just get stuck in Kokiri Forest, have no clue where to go, and because I didn't own it, I never saw anything past the opening area. Until something happened that would make me fall in love with the Zelda series. My older brother's friend bought Ocarina of Time and insisted that we all played it together. And it was during that first day that I realized Zelda isn't just this. It's actually more like this. The realization that behind that boring little forest village was this epic adventure just blew my mind. You went in a tree, you went in a fish, you discovered ancient temples. They had an allure to them that made you want to see what was inside. But they were also daunting because you knew that they'd be challenging and that you'd probably get stuck in there somewhere. I remember thinking that the dungeons were like that one scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark with the booby traps and the special artifacts. And I loved how there were puzzles and riddles that blocked the way forward, like that one scene from The Last Crusade. Yeah, kid me really liked Indiana Jones. And then there were the dark and scary areas of the game. Future Castle Town, the Shadow Temple, the Dodongo's Cavern. They have creepy music and an implied lore around them that adds this unsettling vibe, like that one scene from the Temple of Doom. It was one of the most memorable gaming experiences of my entire life, and I wasn't even the one playing the game. I mostly just sat there as my annoying friend Bradley read all the dialogue out loud. Everyone has a first Zelda game. Ocarina of Time was mine. I beat that game so many times as a kid that people at school would call me for help. And for years, Ocarina of Time defined the formula for Zelda games. Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword. The primary focus was always on the main story and the dungeons as opposed to the open world.
With the exception of Majora's Mask, which focuses on side quests equally to the main story.
And for like 20 years, that was the formula for every main Zelda game. In fact, during that period, the main quest took such a high priority in the developers' minds that by Skyward Sword, they were experimenting with making the gameplay more linear, which nobody was asking for. But the fact that they even thought to do that is just a testament to how much people cared about those main story elements of the games. But after making Skyward Sword, Nintendo realized that nerfing the open world was pissing everyone off, obviously, and that exploration-based gameplay was actually always a core design principle of the original Zelda games. And so with that realization, Aonuma and Nintendo went silent. And for 3 years, there was no news about the next 3D Zelda game. Until E3 2014. When we finally saw our first look at the new direction for the Zelda series. Now this is where I'm supposed to talk about Breath of the Wild and the impact it had on everything because, this is like a video essay or whatever, which for some reason means I have to tell you the history of everything, but f that. Plus Tears of the Kingdom is basically the same game, but better. So I'm just gonna skip ahead and talk about that instead, okay? Holy crap, this game is nuts. First of all, the engine and mechanics are amazing. There's so much creativity in the way that you can interact with the world that they've built. And the world is simultaneously enormous and actually full of stuff to do. I swear I can't go 5 minutes in this game without getting sidetracked by some interesting thing that I find. There are these little areas to explore that weren't there before, all kinds of new enemies, and they're actually worth fighting now because they can make your weapons better. The depths are full of rewarding resources, little side quests, puzzles, shrines to find. This game has a lot of stuff. And the abilities, these abilities let you do such cool things to solve puzzles or even just get to where you want to go. And the building, the idea to take Mumbo's wand from Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, it's genius. What? Someone had to say it. There's so much to do in this game and so much freedom in how you do it that I think this is going to be one of the most endlessly fun games in all of history. I've easily sunk over 60 hours into the game since I first bought it. I don't even regret breaking my Nintendo boycott to get it because it's actually that good of a game. But as much as I'm loving this new game, it just doesn't fully feel like a Zelda game to me. It feels like an incredible open world game with pieces of Zelda mixed in, and that just doesn't scratch the itch that I want it to. You see, the problem is they got rid of the windmill guy. Instead, we just get a main quest that feels underwhelming. The build up to each temple is solid, but it's short-lived and it's also way too easy. Same with the actual temples themselves. They're cool, but they're way too easy and short-lived. And it's frustrating because some of the puzzles that are in those temples and in the shrines are great. But the problem is that they usually only have 1 or 2 layers to them at best. So they end up just feeling like a bunch of separate puzzles in the same location. You don't get a sense of cohesiveness like you do with the older Zelda games. There are no interconnected puzzles throughout the temples, let alone puzzles that are temples, like the Stone Temple or Sky Keep.
Which is kind of funny for me to complain about because Breath of the Wild actually did that part better with the Divine Beasts and how you control them.
But with the exception of maybe one dungeon, if I'm being super generous, the main dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom feel like watered down versions of what we used to see in older Zelda games. In the old Zelda games, you would get dungeons that were centered around a motif or theme. They would introduce a type of puzzle and then build on that, making it harder as the dungeon went on. By the time you get to the boss, it really feels like you've earned it. In Tears of the Kingdom, you get stuff like this.
These flames make it impossible to go further. Hey, the flames have gone out. Now we can move ahead.
And every dungeon can just be boiled down to
Brave fledgling.
Cherished kin. Daughter of the Garuda.
Young little rock.
Use your power to release all 5 locks.
Use your power to turn on the 4 faucets. Use your power to charge the 4 batteries.
The gate you must pass through is firmly locked with 5 padlocks.
Heed my words.
Heed my words. Heed my words.
Heed my words.
And sure, like those 4 puzzles are kind of cool, but like 20 minutes later, you're fighting the boss and it's over. It's just not the same. I mean, if they at least had the damn windmill guy, I mean, think about it. The windmill itself intersects with different parts of the story and it transcends time. Look, I just miss having cohesive dungeons. They all take you on a journey that really tests your abilities. In Tears of the Kingdom, you get small tests scattered throughout the game, but there is no mountain to overcome, aside from literal mountain. The main story feels more like overcoming a small hill, and the shrines are like getting micro doses of good challenges. And for me, that just isn't the same experience that I'm looking for. But what do I know? I grew up with the N64. I basically sound like Abe Simpson at this point.
What the hell are you two doing? It's called
Playing Zelda.
You wouldn't understand, Dad. You're not.
Into Zelda.
I used to be.
Into Zelda.
But then they changed what
Zelda.
was. Now what I'm with isn't.
Zelda.
And what
Zelda.
seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you.
See, I'm making Simpsons jokes. The problem is clearly with me. The truth is that Enuma was actually right about Skyward Sword and the traditional Zelda formula. The original games were about exploration, and they really did compromise on that design principle over time. So it does make perfect sense that they moved into a new direction. But now, with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, instead of embracing everything that makes the Zelda franchise what it is, they've traded the long dungeons for the open world. So in the process, they've essentially traded one design principle for another. And for the thousands of people who were like me and who grew up with those 90s and 2000s Zelda games, it's hard not to feel a little disappointed that the thing we loved the most about these games is just no longer a focus. So, is Tears of the Kingdom a real Zelda game? Of course it is. That was just a fucking clickbait title I used to get you to watch this video. It's honestly one of the best Zelda games I've ever played. It's that good of a game. But god damn it, that's why it's my duty to complain anyways. Just take Tears of the Kingdom, take traditional 3D Zelda games, and just use the fusibility on that shit, okay? Give us the open world and freedom to choose how we progress in the game, and give us a story that plays out in a world with long, cohesive dungeons. And don't tell me that you can't do themed dungeons just because it's open world. This game is such a cool engine, you can make dungeons about anything. Give me one where the puzzles revolve revolve around burning things or doing electric circuits thing? What if there's one all about shield fusions? Just take the best shrines and turn like 6 of them into full dungeons, and there you go. That's all I'm asking for. But unfortunately, it's not exactly clear what's gonna happen with the next Zelda game. Right now, it's a little bit uncertain. Anuma is saying that Tears of the Kingdom will be the model for future Zelda games, just like how Ocarina of Time was back in the 90s. So we'll see what the future has in store for Zelda. It might just be the case that the Zelda I grew up with is gone forever. But I just hope that as Nintendo is working on whatever comes next, in the back of their minds, they're thinking to themselves, bring back Windmill Guy.